A man invades a woman's shelter. Of course, that's not how it's being reported. It's suspect located following sexual assault in women's shelter. Can we scroll that up, guy? Does anyone on this planet think that's a man? I mean, a woman? That is, as Austin Powers once said in The Great Reveal, that's a man. This is misogyny, allowing a biological male into a female shelter, and these are females who have likely been assaulted or sexually assaulted or both, and to allow the fox into the hen house. What do you think might go wrong? And how about this? All those ideologues that chant trans women are real women. How about, do you ever think there might be some men out there who are grifters, that there are con men, that they're just claiming to be a woman to get that much closer to potential victims? Sheila, what are your thoughts on this?
This guy picked the most stripper name I've ever seen as his female name, by the way. This is crazy. Like a nice 5 o'clock shadow, ma'am. Yeah. You couldn't even shave before you slap that crooked wig on your head.
Jeez.
According to the news bulletin, a female victim had contacted police on April 4th to report that she had been sexually assaulted while staying at an unnamed women's shelter in Windsor, Ontario. Name the women's shelter, because women need to know. Vulnerable women need to know where they shouldn't go, because this shelter let this creep show in there. Like, that saunters up to the women's shelter and you're like, get on in here, you big lug. You didn't think that something was wrong? They should tell you which women's shelter vulnerable women and children should avoid like the plague, because they let in monsters like this. Let's keep going. The suspect, who is also residing at the shelter at the time, is alleged to have climbed into the victim's bed and sexually assaulted her. These are vulnerable women fleeing horrible situations, by the way, often with their children. You don't end up in a women's shelter because life has been kind to you. The suspect has been identified by Windsor Police Service as 32-year-old Desiree Anderson, like I said. Pretty stripper name. And then who may also be known as Cody Detremont, I think is how you would say that.
Are you kidding?
Anderson was the subject of a police search today, but turned himself in just hours ago. This is where it gets worse. The case bears some resemblance to a crime which occurred in Parry Sound, Ontario just last year. In October of 2022, it was reported that a woman was allegedly raped by a sex offender after the predator identified as transgender in order to gain access to the facility. Shane Jacob Green, at least we didn't use his new name, was arrested on August 22nd, 2022 by OPP. At the time, OPP issued a notice stating Green had been charged with 2 counts of sexual assault, 4 counts of failing to comply with a probation order. So he's probably already out on they said he was a sex offender. So he's out on probation on a sex offense, staying in a women's shelter. Wow. And a count of failing to comply with a release order. God, I hope he didn't honk his horn in Ottawa. He'd be in jail forever. But it was later revealed that the crimes had occurred while Green was staying at a local women's shelter. Despite Canada's vast size, there is only one known single-sex shelter in the country. Vancouver Rape Relief, and I know these guys have been in trouble for saying we won't take the transes. Located in BC, is Canada's oldest rape crisis shelter. It was stripped of its city funding after asserting it had a right to provide services to females only. Trans activists successfully lobbied the city government to take the shelter's funding contingent on accepting males who identified as transgender. So they would rather have female rape victims out on the street with their children than provide these women a women's only space where they can feel safe. These people are absolute monsters.
You know what, Sheila, as I've stated in the past, if you're a guy identifying as a woman or vice versa, you're out in suburbia, you're just living your life.
I don't care.
I don't care. We're all about freedom. It would be wrong for us to say you cannot do this. Hey, I love Halloween too. I just don't celebrate it 365 days a year.
I just don't want them to make me care. And when they strip the funding from women's shelters so that fewer women and children can get the help that they need, Now I care all of a sudden.
But what I would like to hear from, for those people who are just identifying as the opposing sex, and they're not activists, they're not, trying to gin female sports to allow men in or men to go to female penitentiaries. Where do they weigh in on a story like this? If we have any viewers who are transgendered, please send us a super chat either today or tomorrow, whenever. I really want to hear if you're all down with this radical trans ideology to the point where biological females and their children are being put at risk.
You know what? I think they are. I know they're out there for sure. I know they do. I see them on Twitter sometimes, but usually they're anonymous because they'll get canceled. They'll get their lives ruined by people from which the community they belong. People will find out where they live, where they work. These are the people who are happy to have a rape crisis center stripped of its funding. Imagine what they would do to you. Yeah. If you see what they would do to vulnerable women and children, imagine what they would do to you if they see you as privileged just because you spoke up and disagreed with them. Luckily enough, we work for a company that fights cancel culture, and we would never get fired for our honestly held opinions on this subject matter.
Yeah,
sure.
But that's where blackface and Bill C-11 come in, Sheila. So the fight of our lives. But that's a story for another time.
That's a clip from something we call Rebel News Daily. It's our daily live stream hosted by my friend David Menzies, but the show also includes a rotating cast of hosts and special guests, including me. It's a great way for us to talk about the news of the day as the news is happening in an unscripted fashion, and it's an awesome way for you to interact with us as well. We stream every weekday, 1 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Mountain, wherever you find Rebel News. See you there.